All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into the really fascinating and, yeah, pretty controversial work of Professor Michaéla Schippers. We're going to explore how a deeply personal trauma can become the very lens through which someone analyzes the entire world. I mean, how could that lead someone to see global policies as a direct reflection of their own childhood? Let's find out.
Okay, and this quote? This is pretty much the key to understanding everything. When Schippers said this, she wasn't talking about a rough family dinner. No, she was describing how she felt watching society during the pandemic. So, how on earth could global health policies feel like childhood abuse? That is the huge question we are unpacking today.
So you have to ask, where did these ideas even come from? Well, to really get her professional worldview, we have to start with the personal. Her theories weren't cooked up in some lab. They were forged in the fire of a really traumatic childhood. Just imagine. This was a home completely defined by chaos and fear. She describes her father as having psychopathic traits and her mother as being unable to offer any protection. So she and her siblings, they were basically left on their own to navigate this terrifying landscape of psychological torment.
And here is the really tragic irony. Her father had actually sworn he would not repeat the abuse that he went through as a kid. So why did he? Well, Schippers came to believe it's because he only ever focused on what he didn't want to be. He never consciously chose a new, positive way to act, so the old destructive pattern just took over by default.
And that, right there, leads us to the crucial question that has really defined Schippers' life and her work. If trauma is so easily passed down, what does it actually take to stop it in its tracks? How do you consciously make a different choice?
This one story, the strawberry story, it just illustrates the answer perfectly. So she's watching a friend's child eat strawberries, and out of nowhere she gets this sudden, powerful urge to snatch one away. Exactly the kind of cruel, random thing her father would have done. But in that split second, she didn't just feel the urge. She recognized where it came from. And in that moment of awareness, she made a new choice. She literally sat on her hands. And that proves that breaking a cycle isn't one big, grand decision. It's a series of conscious, moment-to-moment choices.
So, this very deep personal understanding of trauma and control, it was about to be put to the test. Because when the pandemic hit, it gave Schippers a very unique perspective, and it was one that put her on a collision course with the academic and political establishment. While much of the world was locking down, Schippers was busy analyzing the data, and her research led her to a really stark conclusion. From her point of view, the measures being put in place had no proven scientific benefit, and worse, were causing catastrophic damage, like a massive spike in global hunger. She saw locking people in their homes not as a health measure, but as a kind of mass imprisonment, without justification.
Taking this kind of stance came at a huge professional price. The response wasn't a debate, it was a systematic shutdown. First, her work was just ignored. Then came the attempts to undermine her credibility. Journal after journal rejected her papers. And the final blow? Her own university publicly disavowed her work without even picking up the phone to speak with her first.
And this whole experience revealed what Schippers calls a perverse incentive structure in academia. It seemed like there were two clear paths. You could follow the dominant narrative and boom, publications come easy, your career advances. Or you could ask critical questions, the very foundation of science, and you'd face censorship, rejection, and immense personal risk.
For Schippers, this wasn't just about politics in the academic world. She started to see the pattern she'd experienced, the gaslighting, the control, the punishment for disagreeing, as symptoms of a much bigger societal sickness, a destructive spiral she believes we are all caught in right now. She often uses this concept to explain how things can go so wrong. It's called the Cobra effect, and it describes a situation where your solution actually backfires and makes the problem worse. The classic example is when a government trying to get rid of cobras offered a bounty for cobra heads. So what happened? People started breeding cobras just to collect the bounty. And when the program was eventually canceled, they just released all the snakes, making the cobra problem way worse than it was before. Building on that idea, she co-authored a theory called the death spiral effect. Now, this is based on something real in nature called an ant mill. It's where army ants get separated from the main group and start following each other in a circle, a fatal loop, until they literally die of exhaustion. For Schippers, this is the perfect metaphor for modern society. We're stuck following a path that's leading us absolutely nowhere good. And a key driver of this spiral? Dehumanization. The moment we stop debating ideas and we just start slapping labels on people, whether it's wappy or sheep, we strip them of their humanity.
And once someone isn't fully human in our eyes, it becomes alarmingly easy to dismiss them, to mistreat them, and to silence them. This, she argues, is what's accelerating our downward spiral.
So, this all comes together in her central thesis. What we're all witnessing, the division, the irrationality, the cycles of control and rebellion, is society acting out a collective, unresolved trauma. Just like her father reenacted his childhood pain, she believes our society is stuck in a loop, re-traumatizing itself over and over and over again. But, Schippers isn't just pointing out what's wrong. She's actively trying to find a cure. If we really are in a death spiral, how do we get out? For her, the answer doesn't come from the top down. It has to come from the ground up.
And this is her answer: the Great Citizens Movement. It's a grassroots effort she co-founded. The goal isn't to fight the old system, but to co-create a new one that's built on core human values that champion freedom of thought, wisdom that comes from open debate, and genuine humanity in how we treat each other.
And this brings us completely full circle, from the societal right back to the individual. For Schippers, the only way to heal our collective trauma is through individual healing. She truly believes that every single person who breaks their own cycle, just like she did in that moment with the strawberry, creates a ripple effect. This personal healing radiates outward, influencing families, communities, and, ultimately, the entire world.
So we end right back where we started. From her father's unconscious repetition of the past, to her own split-second choice, to her call for a society-wide reversal, the entire story really hinges on this one profound question. And it's not just a question for academics or leaders, it's a question for every single one of us.